You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Best New Comics of the Week show. I am here with my man, Gray. What up, Gray?
Hey, Jim. How's it going? Great title for the show, by the way.
Yes, since we did it 2 times, I finally got it right. But here we are, books that came out mainly on the 26th of June. And there were a bunch of books. Marvel had a ton of books, but yet we're not going to have a ton of books on the show with it. But just because we end up picking our books, our favorite books of the week, doesn't mean that you can't do the same. And please, if you have books that we didn't talk about, or if you agree, let us know. Let us know what your favorite comic books are of the week in the show notes, comments, whatever you call it. And because if people tune in, and maybe you can end up pushing them towards some good books, there's always good books to read, even though sometimes it feels like there aren't many. But we're going to start, as we do, with DC Comics. And I ended up picking this first one, and it is Absolute Power Ground Zero #1. I know that a lot of people will be against this. I know that people don't like Mark Waid. If that's the case, that is your, prerogative, like Bobby Brown saying back in the day, and you can do what you want. But I did like it. It's written by Mark Waid with Joshua Williamson, Nicole Maines, and Chip Zdarsky. You have art by Gleb Melnikoff, Skylar Partridge, and V. Ken Marion, who is a friend of the show's. And you end up having 3 stories that set up Absolute Power. I didn't know going in how this was going to play. I thought it was going to be a catch-up for people who might have missed some of these stories, but it actually does go forward, set things up. Specifically, the second and third stories that kind of set up the idea of how the failsafe robot that Batman had, that goes to Amanda Waller, and also the Machine Queen, the Brainiac Queen, that ends up being kind of raised by Amanda Waller in a way that I thought was pretty interesting. Again, I'm looking forward to the event. A lot of people aren't, but did you read it, Gray?
I did, yeah. I enjoyed it too. As you say, that Amanda Waller raising Brainiac Queen was very, very weird, but also very interesting. Something kind of original, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't expect something like that.
I didn't.
And if you were somebody who was wondering why they brought up the Sanctuary, deal from Heroes in Crisis, something that nobody should ever bring up as Heroes in Crisis. But when you end up having Green Arrow go and get the Sanctuary tech in the Green Arrow book, and he gives it to Amanda Waller, and I'm not going to spoil what she does, but you end up seeing what she does with that tech, and it felt original. It felt kind of cool the way that she did it. I didn't expect to actually think that something like that was kind of neat and sets up a little personal play in this whole Absolute Power, but I'm looking forward to Absolute Power. I hope that it's good, mainly because a lot of people are bailing on DC, but we'll have to wait and see how it is when we get to it. But we'll go to the next book, and it's another pick by me, and it is Superman #15, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Rafa Sandoval. It's the final chapter in the House of Brainiac. I'm not going to say that this is a perfect issue, but I actually like some things that it sets up by the end. There's some cool setups for future stories, things like that. And it's the story that does send the Brainiac Queen off to Amanda Waller. So it does tie in directly to the beginning of the House, or Absolute Power. And I thought that the House of Brainiac was decent. I thought it was pretty good. Didn't think it was great. Some of the ideas of what exactly Brainiac was doing kind of got lost in the shuffle, and they had some wonky things, but I actually liked it. Did you read this?
I did, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole House of Brainiac story, Jim. I thought it was kind of, a bit goofy, but what's wrong with a bit of goofy fun sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, goofy fun is goofy fun. and in there, again, it's not really, it is spoilers, but I will end up telling people in case they're not reading it, might be interested. At the end, you pretty much get Simple Lex, who doesn't remember he's Lex Luthor and seems real simple, like he has mind movies, right? And then at the very end, you end up seeing that Doomsday is going to be coming back, and that's pretty cool, and actually ties into the Doomsday special that they had, the Action Comics Doomsday special in August.
That one shot was really good. I enjoyed that back in the day.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It's Dan Waters who did it, so it was pretty good, and ended up being something that I'm kind of glad that we're going. And it's Doomsday, so people are going to be excited about that. So that's something that I would check out. There was a couple others. Action Comics, we had the part 5, I guess, or part 4, whatever part. It was the penultimate deal. It was supposed to come out last week, and it ended up getting pushed to this week. It was kind of cool having both chapters to end the House of Brainiac this week. There was also Power Girl, and that stunk. So don't read that. I would not suggest that one. Action Comics was okay, pretty much just setting up the Superman deal. It was all set up to set it up. So I had Superman number 15, but for our last DC book, I'm going to send it over to you because this is a Gray pick, 100% Gray. What is it?
This is a surprise. I know. It's Detective Comics, issue 1086, written, of course, by Ram V. It's got art by Stefano Raphael as the main artist. There's a backup story, isn't there, Jim? It's Alex Pacnadel, is that right? And Lisandro Esteren. Geez, these names are getting more and more difficult to pronounce. But I know people are kind of a little bit down on Detective Comics. It's like the longest storyline ever, in the world. I like it. I like the slow burn. I like the amount of characters, at times almost too much. What did you think of Dweller Dent appearing in this?
And I like Joker's Daughter. I know that a lot of people don't, and I made the joke, something that my wife gets mad at because she seems to think she came up with the slogan, but I did not have Joker's Daughter on my bingo card this week for any of the books.
I didn't.
You end up, Ram V brings her back, and it actually fits the continuity. She ended up being able to kind of get away from that. She was in the Red Hood and the Outlaws book, and she ended up kind of being able to be cured and was just living a normal life, and the Joker comes and screws her. I didn't expect the Joker to be...
I didn't. What did you think of the way Ram V wrote him? I thought it was pretty good.
Okay,
pretty
yeah.
menacing.
That whole play. Now, in it, like the idea of having Joker's Daughter out of nowhere. And I'll tell you, one of the things that threw me was adding extra characters with a couple.
I can see that.
A couple issues left in the run. This isn't just a couple of issues left in the arc. This is it. And you add these, but maybe this is something to look at of what Ram V is planning on in the future, bringing back Dweller Dent and kind of going with that maybe as something planned with some crazy book, because he does dark books. So maybe it'll be something along those lines.
Ten-Eyed Man as well, Jim, came back.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's one of your favorites, isn't he? But I actually like him. I like talking
nonsense, right? And what I do like about the Detective Comics story, it is really setting up that the Orgums are going to have to go against Batman and everybody in Gotham, including the villains, because Batman is going and grabbing the villains and saying, you owe me this and give me this and whatnot with Two-Face. And you even have, like you said, Ten-Eyed Man and things like that. So that's interesting. I thought that one of the things, Gordon has a narration at one, not even a narration. He's talking to Renee Montoya. And it might be the funniest thing I've ever heard him say, where he just keeps going and going with these phrases that he has of like, it's almost like it's the darkness of the city. And then he just keeps going. It gets weirder and weirder. I'm like, I don't know what he's even saying. But did you like the art?
I did for most of the time. I wasn't sure about the main artist's take on Joker, that's all. Everything else looked awesome. It was good seeing Two-Face in there. Harvey Dent, not seen him for a while. And Jim, that opening splash page of the train tracks and stuff, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And then the backups with Harvey too, Two-Face.
Yeah, that was like a gangster story, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was kind of cool. I can't even remember the guy's name. It was some crazy name that this guy ended up stealing some of the money and kind of skimming the deal. But it was, I can understand that you like it. And in it, I think that maybe like long time comic fans might like this a little more because it is such a extended story and slow burn and things like that you end up you have to be patient with it. And I'm not patient.
Yeah. I wonder if it's one they'll come back to in the future. People will say, okay, it actually reads very well in one go as you read through. I don't know.
One guy already told me that he went through it and he said that it was pretty good going through it, but he already liked it in the first time reading, so he went through. But
it is a bit divisive, but what can you do?
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to have a big omnibus and things like that with his run, and it'll be looked at because it is such a long run with this one story, but we'll see how that is. We'll go off, though, to Marvel Comics, and we have one book at Marvel Comics. It's my pick. It's Wolverine Madripoor Nights number 5. It ends this little mini written by Chris Claremont, Edgar Salazar on art. And there's not tons to talk about in this. I said to you, I almost ended up like, should I put it on? I did like it, but there's not a lot to talk about in this final battle in here. It's just that I liked it because it was just some action. You end up getting Black Widow, Cap, and Wolverine just going at it. They end up fighting these bad guys. And by the end, they kind of like leave with the, hey, we're friends here, but we might be enemies later. And if we come across things, it's also funny that Cap at one point is like, man, I don't know. Killing people's kind of fun. I never knew that. And you end up like Black Widow and Wolverine, like, yeah, we knew that because they have done it. But Cap, it's weird to have to go all out in this, but he ends up doing it. But I really don't have a ton to say, except that, you might want to check out the miniseries because it was pretty cool. It's Chris Claremont, and it's just straight up, this action from back in the day with a story in Madripoor.
Just looking at the cover now, Jim, that's a weird take on Black Widow, isn't it, on the cover by Philip Tan? Interesting.
You have some crazy villains that are going on, and they're changing them into it ends up being pretty wacky by the end. But I thought it was pretty cool. And, I'd like to read these older things and give a little props to Chris Claremont.
Nice.
And in that, I almost put these Venom 2099. It's just that I don't really have a big connection to the 2099 stuff, let alone Venom and all that. So I was liking some of the issues. This final issue had a couple twists and turns that didn't really hit with me because, again, I don't know a lot of the characters in that universe. So I had almost made it. But again, it's another back in the day book because it seems like those are, solid gold at Marvel, as opposed to some of the regular books runs, but that is Marvel. That's it for Marvel. This is going to be a quick show. I said that. Yeah, I told you it's going to be quick, rapid fire. No, I did not. That drove me nuts. And Ultimate Black Panther, I was disappointed by. I was kind of bored with that as well. But I'm sure that it can pick it up. Blood Hunt, I just don't think there's a story there. Just didn't feel like it. You know what I mean? It seems like already in the main book, they've run out of story and just have moments to just pick up other books later and things like that as that sort of deal. I don't hear anyone
talking about it hardly at all.
No, nobody at all. Even nobody even seems to care about videos about it or reviews. No. So that's a hint for people to go watch my review. And here's so Indie Comics deal. What's that?
Yeah. No, just saying, you go and watch Jim's review, then you don't have to read it.
Yeah, really. Indie Comics, we have a couple. We're in connection on one, and I think it's what everybody would love for the week. But I'll start out. This is probably the weirdest book that is out right now. Grommets, #2, written by Rick Remender, Brian Posehn, and Moreno Di Nicio on art. It's just like a weird, we were going to talk about it on our indie podcast, but I don't know what you talk about with this book. It's just kids hanging out and doing things, and just really that's it. And then
it's done really well. It's fun, isn't it, Jim? It's a really fun, kind of nostalgic blast of the past.
Yeah, I really like it, but yet again, it's hard to kind of explain why.
It's not like there's much of a story, is there? Really?
No, there's not. I don't think there's a story at all. I think that we're going to go through these issues and just hang out with these kids. There was a weird play in the first issue where there was that meteorite that came down in the beginning of time, and then it kept going and then knocked the kid off the skateboard. That might not be picked up. That was just something. But in this issue, you end up having Rick and Brian meet up with these girls, and they're skating. This one girl ends up just clocking a security guard and activates his dental plan.
That scene,
Some of the fun things are just seeing the old menu at Taco Bell, or seeing some of the posters or the band names and things like that. And I'm telling you, the grandfather in the book, he's the breakout character. That guy is crazy. But
he's my favorite character, yeah.
If you like nostalgia, 80s, early 90s type deal, I think that you'd like it because you'll see things like, oh, yeah, that's how it was. And you have a lot of skateboarding and stuff like that. But again, it's even more specific to California. I'm on the East Coast, but I can, kind of go with the deal. But it's just odd. It's just odd book to actually explain. It's a slice of life from back in the day that I think some people, if they like it, they'll probably love it.
I think that's why I'm enjoying it, Jim, especially coming from the UK. It's showing me a slice of life of America back in the 80s. And for me, it's fascinating. But as you say, it's just fun. The people who are reading it seem to be really enjoying it. I don't know if there are many reading it. But
Yeah. I hope that some people, I could see this as a weird series, but nothing would ever. I said, I know this is 70s, but Dazed and Confused, the movie, it reminds me of that kind of thing. You're just popping in with these kids and see what they do. There's not a real overarching story of, oh my God, we're being attacked by aliens, we have to do this or that. It's just them hanging.
Just seen a comment here, Jim. I don't know if this is true, but it says it's too bad it's only 7 issues. There you go.
Yeah. And
I didn't know.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that I just enjoy popping in and reading it and having fun. And like when you read it, you're like, oh man, I remember that, or oh, I saw that, or that's cool. I didn't know that. You just kind of get that feeling. And the characters are not perfect, but they're kind of likable. I like the girls.
They feel like characters, actual characters, yeah.
They just feel like kids that are just hanging. Nothing is like over the top or shoved in your face with it. So I
You were a skateboarder, Jim, back in the day?
I was a little, but I was terrible. I was pretty bad. I couldn't do it. Yeah, I tried. I was pretty bad. I actually, in this week's DC Comics podcast, I said that I was into a lot of like skateboarding and stuff until I saw the X Games. And then I got pissed because everybody was friendly. And I like competition. So when, you have a skateboarder, like he's on all of a sudden he falls and then everybody's helping him up and patting him on the back. I'm like, what's going on? That's your enemy. It can't work like that. So I used to get mad. But with all of that, I suggest it's one of those I would never actually tell somebody you have to read this because I don't know if they'll even get it. But if it is something that skater culture, 80s, 90s, if that's something that you enjoy, I'd say check out the first issue. If you're going to like it, you'll know from the first couple pages. And I think the art's really cool. I think it's very unique. It looks a lot at times like a Mad Magazine type deal. Or even
it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought it looked like that. And even some of those like National Lampoon posters where they like for Owl House and stuff like that. It kind of has that feel of art style.
It suits the story.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. So the next one, though, is one of yours. And I have to catch up. I have to end up reading it because I don't know if Gray. I ended up naming the letters page for this. I've never told anybody.
I think of you.
So what is it, Gray?
It is from Image Comics, The Sacrificers, issue 9, written by Rick Remender, art by Max Fiumara, and colours by Dave McCabe. And I tell you what, Jim, I know you have been reading it as well. You might have missed a couple of issues, but this issue, the main character, Pigeon, he just goes insane, like ballistic. He takes on a god, Aquatica, the god of the water, the god of the sea. It's unbelievable. It doesn't hold back on the violence, I tell you.
Yeah, and I ended up hearing a lot of people say it was really, really good. There's a couple of people I know that read it, and they had this as their book of the week. It's funny, too, because, again, you have the Sacrificers, and then you have Grommets, both Rick Remender, and so different.
Oh, yeah.
They're like so different,
completely
a type
different,
of book, you know what I mean? And I did have some people were like taken aback a bit, like, oh my God, this Pigeon went nuts, and I hope that this doesn't continue, and if it continues, but I heard a lot of people did end up liking it, so that's cool. Also, people did probably like the name of the letters page is what they really would like. It must have been a genius who came up with that.
Up with that. Well, yeah, the art's awesome. I'm a big fan of Fiumara's art, Jim, and it does look great. It's worth a look. If you like fantasy, just give it a shot, see what you think. And it's quite moving at times.
That's cool. And I like I said, I have to catch up. But tonight, I think, it's getting a little bit late, but not too late. I might have a little free time tonight, and that's like on my list of things that I have to sit down and just read so that we can talk about issue number 10, because it does pop up a lot in our best of the week. But the final issue, again, it's every issue as that's come out. I think every issue that's come out from Ghost Machine has been on our best of the week. I don't think one has missed the mark. And this is Rook Exodus number 3, written by Jeff Johns, art by Jason Fabach. And one of the big things I ended up kind of on our DC Comics podcast this week made fun of Jeff Johns, because next week it seems like the Justice Society of America, the JSA book, might come out. Issue 10.
No,
I said, I don't
believe it.
It's one of those things that it's like, it's like Bigfoot. I ain't going to believe it until I see it in the wild. And so I said that it's amazing that book gets so delayed, but yet there's Jeff Johns pumping out 3 books a month, and people are waiting for these things to be delayed. They don't seem to be delayed, and it might be just
how ahead they are on these. How far ahead you think they must be, because they're coming out, as you say, monthly with the same artists, and they're fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, it's great. And really Rook Exodus, I had people tell me that they didn't like this issue, and I thought, really? What the heck are you talking about? Because we are introduced to all the rest of the wardens, while this Ursaw, the Bear Warden, is coming to try to take down Dire Wolf. turtle warden that we actually meet that I think plays off a lot like Yoda. And you also have Rook. And it's a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, it's set up with the other wardens. But I was intrigued, especially saying, why do you need a rooster warden? That was the one that a lot of people were confused. But even when I say I don't know why you need a locust warden, that guy looked pretty cool.
That spider one was freaking me out, Jim. The arachnid one's like, oh no,
nobody
I don't want to see his face.
That guy. Nobody likes the spider warden. But I want to end up seeing the rooster warden. Yeah, bunch. And they're pretty cool to get this whole scope of what's going on. And then you also see Ursal, who's already taken the bear helmet. We know that he ended up killing swine. And so all of this going, and even has a python deal. It's like J-Lo and Anaconda. You end up where all this going on, where he has the wall with all of these empty spaces for the mask. It reminded me sometimes when you see False Face and the False Face Society, when they have all these things up there. But it's kind of cool to give you a perspective of, okay, there's that many. But even just the story, you end up having turtles with giant mecha on them. And
how
things
awesome
like
were
that.
they, Jim? They were cool when they came out of the water. That was really funny. And it was quite funny at times. There's some funny lines in this book.
And really the overall story, not just Ursal Bear Warden. It's that Rook, he was trying to get off Exodus. He was trying to leave. And he doesn't have a real, like the connection he has with his birds. It's just like, oh, I'm going to use them until I don't. He even says, if I died, they start eating me. And when Dire Wolf starts doing things and takes off her helmet, and he says, you got to put your helmet on. They're going to eat you. And she's like, no, I have a connection with these. That's what Swine was saying. Swine didn't want to go and leave Exodus because he did want to save it. And so you get that connection of, this connection with the animals that you end up being a warden. Rook never seems to have accepted that. He just is there. And the crows are kind of annoying to him, and he's, their thoughts are in my brain. He gets all weirded out by it.
Because if people don't know, these animals are huge, aren't they, Jim? They're kind of like, mutated giant versions of themselves. So, my God, would you take your helmet off? Would you take that risk?
I wouldn't. I'd be like Rook. I'd be cynical and just want. And even that plays out when they go to the Turtle Warden, that they end up going to the Sanctuary deal to get to the main engine so that they can reach out to all of the other wardens and tell them, hey, we need you. We're kind of compromised with this Ursal. Even though when they were doing that, I'm like, he's going to hear this. But they do send it out. I'm afraid that when they sent that out, that kind of gave him the pin locations on a lot of them. But you end up where Turtle says, you wanted to leave. Like, why would we deal with you? I don't not trust you. He says, we can't rely on you because you want to bail. And the rest of them do want to try to save Exodus, whether it can be saved or not. But at the end, you see that Ursal and his new swine deal. And even then you have Pumbaa the swine who's kind of, fighting back, and Mrs. Swine. And that's kind of like, I'm your leader now. And then you have Python and also the bears that are humongous.
How cool was the stag? Do you remember the stag ward? I think it's a stag that actually spoke Japanese, Jim. It was in Japanese.
And he looked like a samurai. There was cool things. Like awesome. When you saw them all, you're like, oh my God, you could have so many stories with all the rest of them and having these, that I thought it was really great. And the art is outstanding. It's really good. And this is easily my book of the week. I think it's the best book that came out this week too. And had me all excited. And again, I don't know why, if you're listening to this and not reading any of these books, like I'd really suggest going and reading. First off, the Energon stuff is really good, but I'm really liking the Ghost Machine stuff as well. So I would suggest reading that. But that's it. That's our books of the week. A little shorter show than what we usually have, but we still got to, about 25 minutes. But before we leave again, please let us know what your books of the week are. I know there's a couple that will definitely be mentioned by people, but that's what's cool. Everybody likes something and sometimes things almost squeak in and almost barely don't, but that's how we do the show. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for joining me, Gray. Everybody, please go into the show notes and check out the link to Gray's channel, the Wakazashi's Tea House, where you can get a bunch of reviews, movie stuff, a lot of stuff that is way more expansive than what I end up doing here. But with all that, thanks, and we will talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.